Okay, we are good to go. So Lucy, why don't you take it away?
Okay, thanks, Alexi. Good afternoon, everybody. I think I know all or most of you at this point, but my name is Lucy Rogers. Hi, Tony. I'm a former VC-BEAD employee, and I'm now working with the VC-BEAD in a consultant role. I had done some work developing the BEAD program for Vermont, and am now helping with some of the implementation pieces. So I'm going, as Alexi said, I will start off. I want to give a little bit of just background on BEAD, and then kind of talk about the role of the reviewers generally, and then we'll pass it along to RSM and Amplifund for more detail. So I have some slides. Let me just open them up here. Share. Sorry, quick slight pause for technical difficulties. I think I'm set now though. All right. Can you all see my slides?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And Alexi, do you have any preference? I don't mind if people interrupt with thoughts, comments, questions. Would you prefer if people hold?
Why don't we hold in between presenters? I think that might provide a good point at which to clarify things at the different levels.
Okay, great. So we are all here for the reviewer workshop. Thank you very much for agreeing to participate as a reviewer. I just put on, I would imagine you all have it, but the BEAD website here, and I'm sure these slides will be available to you afterwards. The BEAD website as part of the VC-BEAD website is kind of the go-to resource for all the BEAD information. We talked about today's workshop. And then I also just have a slide here for reference for you all that has some of the common abbreviations and acronyms, both within BEAD, the Broadband Equity, Access and Deployment Act, and within kind of the broadband world generally. Some of these will be familiar and some of them may be program specific to you, but I'll try to make sure to spell out acronyms as I use them throughout this presentation. So I wanted to start by just providing a little bit of background on the BEAD program to level set us. So the BEAD program stands for Broadband Equity, Access and Deployment. It is a part of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or the bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed in 2021 in the beginning of the Biden administration. It provides $42 billion to expand high-speed internet across all 50 states, Washington, D.C., and U.S. territories. It is administered by the NTIA, or the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, which is part of the Federal Department of Commerce. And there is an allocation to the different states. So Vermont's allocation is about $229 million, and that is being administered through the VC-BEAD. So that's just kind of a little bit of background of why we're here now. The act was passed in 2021. The NTIA then was developing the guidance and protocol for the act, and then there's been kind of an extensive planning period that many of you have been engaged in, and we are now at the point of beginning the implementation of this money. So the ultimate goal and outcome of VT-BEAD, or Vermont's BEAD program, is a commitment to serve every unserved location in the state and as many underserved locations in the state as possible with broadband with speeds of greater than 120 megabits per second within 4 years. So that's kind of the parameters of the BEAD program. It's a 4-year implementation program. It has a minimum speed requirement for BEAD funded projects of 120 megabits per second, and we're required in Vermont to reach every unserved location with this program, and then the hope is to also reach underserved locations as well. So the BEAD program prioritizes end-to-end fiber optic technology, and we'll talk quite a bit more about that today, because that's a part of kind of the review process, is ensuring that we're prioritizing funding fiber when possible. There's instances when it will not be possible, either because there weren't bids for fiber technology, or because there isn't enough BEAD money to fund a fiber bid while still meeting the BEAD requirement to serve every unserved location in the state. So in those instances, the next most scalable and resilient technology feasible will be prioritized. And so, as I said, this is a competitive bid process. There's 32 project areas throughout the state, and so there will be a competitive bid in each of competitive bid process that will be for each of those project areas. So I wanted to just show you, just so you kind of have a sense what the project area map looks like. So each BEAD proposal that will be coming in will cover exactly one project area. There's no opportunity for proposals to break up project areas, and that is in order to ensure a commitment that every unserved address will ultimately get served. We are requiring that project areas be served altogether. And then on the flip side, if a certain entity wants to apply for 4 or 5 project areas, they would be submitting 4 or 5 separate applications, so that we are able to do apples to apples comparisons for each project area. So as you can see, that the project areas are shown here on the map, and then the little hexagons are they are very high cost addresses that all have formed their own project area. So all of the other project areas are contiguous kind of polygon project areas, and then there's one set of points that's a high cost project area that we expect are addresses that are unreachable with fiber, is our expectation for those addresses. Yes.
I don't understand. Can you go back one slide?
Yep.
I don't understand the project area in the northwestern part of the state. Is that 3 different project areas, or just for this?
Oh, good question. So project area 51 would be kind of the big shape you're looking at. And then project area 52, there's actually there's a small polygon that there's a little line.
Okay, all right.
And then I'm not sure project area 47. I don't know if someone else.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Sorry. So project area 47 is actually the territory of Northwest Fiberworks. 51 is the city, I think, right? City of St. Albans?
No, I'm sorry. 51 is the high cost. Yeah. 51 is labeling all the hexagons throughout the state, I believe.
I got you. Okay.
Oh, you're right.
It makes sense now.
52 is that little guy.
Clearly a good question. But we got there.
Yeah.
Shall I continue? Are we good? Good question. Great question. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of also orient us. That was a little bit of orientation about the BEAD program. There's obviously a lot more, but that felt like the most kind of relevant background to give. And so now just kind of level setting on where we are, where Vermont is currently in this process. So Vermont BEAD has had both a pre-proposal and a full proposal part of the process. The pre-proposal period involved prospective BEAD subrecipients indicating their interest in BEAD, and so it helped with making sure that that Vermont will be receiving adequate proposals to cover the state. And I just put here that BEAD is open to all types of internet service provider entities, public, private, etc. Then there was a pre-proposal review period that has already happened, that was conducted by VCBB and consultants. And that also was the period in which the final project areas that we just looked at were finalized based on some feedback received during the pre-proposal period. So that all has happened already. We are now in the full proposal period. And then when the full proposal period ends, that is when the full proposal review takes place, which is what we'll be talking about today and is what you all will be supporting with. Okay, and so this team is made up of state employees from VCBB and PSD, and then members of VCBB's contracted support team, which is RSM, the firm RSM, and myself. Then just to kind of briefly go through what that full proposal review process is going to look like once the full proposal period closes in a couple weeks here. So VCBB will assign each reviewer a set of proposals to score. And that will be kind of what initiates your formal role. Some proposals will not be scored. I'll explain that a little bit later, but in certain instances, the most obvious example being if there's a project area that gets one proposal, there is no need to score because there is already a clear winner for that project area, assuming that it's an adequate and sufficient proposal. Proposals will be scored by multiple reviewers to ensure a fair process, and then each reviewer will score only a subset of the proposals to ensure a manageable workload for reviewers. Reviewers will use Amplifund to submit initial scores, and that's what Jennifer will be going over a bit later today. And then VCBB will convene reviewers at a scheduled consensus meeting, and that is where there will be an opportunity. There'll be a few scores that won't be assigned until that consensus meeting, and there'll also be an opportunity to discuss the different proposals and why different scores were assigned for each proposal. And then yes.
You said some proposals will not need to be scored by reviewers. Well, I didn't catch what the reasoning was.
Yep, I'll go into a little more detail on that later on, but it basically is if there's a situation where there's not competition within a project area. So a really clear example would be if there's a project area that receives only one proposal and the proposal is a good proposal, we're not going to put it doesn't go through the scoring process because there's no other proposals to compare it to.
Who determines if it's a good proposal?
Let's hold on that for a minute because I will go into more detail. I'm about to get into more detail on that process, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
And then we can circle back if there's additional questions after that. So just to kind of just so you know where all this is heading, once the scores have been submitted, VCBB enters negotiations with the highest scoring entity for that project area. And so there's kind of a final period of making sure that of final negotiations to get the best possible outcome for the project. So now, hopefully the next few slides will get to some of those questions. So the process has some nuance to it because of the effort to spend BEAD funding on the most scalable, resilient, and reliable technology possible. And this is kind of baked into the BEAD program itself. This is not a Vermont process, but so there's basically these three categories of projects: and priority, other last mile that provide reliable broadband service, and other last mile that do not provide reliable broadband service. So I'm going to define them and then come back to this slide. So defining them, priority broadband projects are end-to-end fiber projects, 100% fiber optic projects. Other last mile projects that provide reliable broadband service are not priority projects, so they may include some fiber, but they are not 100% fiber, and they will have a combination of fiber, cable, DSL, and licensed fixed wireless. Then, and reliable broadband service, just to be clear, is a defined term that's defined to be these technologies. So it's not a subjective term. It's a defined term in for the purposes of BEAD. And then other last mile projects that do not provide a reliable broadband service would be projects that use other technology types such as satellite, unlicensed fixed wireless. They may also have fiber, cable, DSL mixed in, but if they include those technology types, then they become termed an other last mile project that does not provide reliable broadband service. They still have to meet the speed requirements for 120 megabits per second speed, latency requirements. So they're still meeting the performance standards, but this is based on the technology that's used. So back to this slide, the process for each project area is to start with priority broadband projects, to check gating criteria, which I will get into in a minute. That's how we know that the project is adequate, the kind of phrase I was using earlier, and then score between the priority broadband projects for a certain project area. And then VCBB would negotiate with a prospective winner. If this does not result in a workable priority broadband project, either there weren't any to begin with, or they were not able to be negotiated to a price that made it affordable under the BEAD program, then the same steps would be repeated for this blue box for the other last mile reliable broadband service projects of checking gating criteria, scoring, and negotiating. And if that does not result in a sufficient project, then the same steps would be completed for other last mile projects that do not provide reliable broadband service. The goal is that from the reviewer experience perspective, this would not be a process that you all will need to be kind of like mapping out and keeping track of. That VCBB will be kind of assigning, doing the work behind the scenes to figure out which proposals need to be scored, and then assigning them appropriately to you as reviewers. But I just wanted to give you a sense of these are all of the steps that are being worked through to ultimately get to scoring of projects and then a winning project for the project area. And I will go into more detail about the gating criteria. So gating and scoring criteria. Gating criteria is basically, is the project satisfactory by BEAD requirements? That has to do with, is it providing speeds that are required by BEAD's 120? Does the applicant actually have the managerial and operational and financial capacity to deliver on what it says it will deliver in its proposal? And so these are all pass-fail criteria. And it's basically, you must meet these criteria in order to be considered for BEAD funding. You don't get points for them. So those gating criteria will be assessed by VCBB's consultant team. So RSM is taking the lead on that, and then there's other consultants involved. That is separate from the scoring work that this team is doing. This is simply a pass-fail. Is this proposal adequate to be considered for funding? The scoring is where we evaluate competing proposals to choose which one is the preferable proposal, and that is the place where this review team is involved. So I'm moving into what the scoring criteria are. So I guess maybe I know we said hold questions till the end, but if it's okay, maybe I'll pause for a second and just confirm if this answered the earlier question about how the scoring fits into the overall process. I'm going to take silence as a yes and continue on, and we'll have time for questions later. So the full proposal scoring criteria, there's 7 criteria, and I am going to briefly explain what they are, and then I'm going to hand it over to RSM, who will go a lot more in depth with this. But I want, so these are the criteria that that the BEAD projects will get scored on, and I'm going to briefly go through them one by one just to define them and give the general sense. So there's 3, these are called the primary scoring criteria. They are worth the most points: minimal BEAD program outlay, affordability, and fair labor standards. Minimal BEAD program outlay is basically how much BEAD money is being requested, and because every proposal is going to be for no more and no less than one project area, it is possible to kind of apples to apples compare the requested BEAD funding for proposals in a certain project area, because they all will be proposing to serve the same set of locations. So the only nuance to this criteria is that there's also consideration for scalability, redundancy, and resiliency, recognizing that in some instances, a project may cost more to serve the whole project area, but it may cost more because it is actually serving it in a more redundant, resilient way. So there is a little bit of nuance here as opposed to it being purely the cost, and this will be scored at the consensus meeting. And as I said, RSM will go into more detail on the exact point system for how those 31 points are allocated. Then affordability is based on a really specific benchmark plan. So the affordability is based on the price of 1 gigabit symmetrical plans for all fiber projects and 100 over 20 megabit per second plans for other last mile projects. So that's the benchmark plan that affordability gets scored against, and then it's also it also considers how many years there's a commitment to keep that same inflation adjusted price. So that's an automatic calculation that does not involve reviewer input. And then fair labor standards is the first one that reviewers will input on their own before the consensus meeting. And this has to do with the demonstrated record of and plans to comply with federal labor and employment laws, as well as offering elements that promote job quality and creation. And as I said, RSM will get into more of the details of how that is calculated. Okay, then there's 4 secondary scoring criteria that are worth fewer amounts of points. The first is community input and engagement. This is showing what work has been done before proposing this project to ensure that it meets the specific needs of the community, and to remain engaged with the community into the future. This is an all or none question. There's a certain set of criteria that must be met to receive all the points. Otherwise, there are no points received. And over here, you see it says 12 points / 5 points for priority broadband projects or all fiber projects. This will be worth 12 points. For other last mile projects, projects that are not 100% fiber, it will be worth 5 points. Local coordination, 11 points or 5 points. This one is similar, but instead of focus on kind of community and the people living in the area, this focuses on the structure. So the local municipalities, regional planning commissions, and then alignment with state broadband planning efforts, as well as a plan, an ongoing plan for local coordination in the future. And then the last 2 criteria here. So speed to deployment is worth 2 points. And this is just if they are going to complete it earlier than the 4-year BEAD implementation period, they can earn a point or 2 there. and speed of network and other technical capabilities. This one is the one that it will not be scored in comparing all fiber projects to each other, but in comparing other last mile projects. It is worth 13 points, and this is where the speed, latency, and stability of the technology itself is evaluated, as well as commitments to continue upgrading technology as it evolves. So with that, I want to share the timeline, and then we will, I think, take any questions from me, and then I'll pass it over to RSM. So as I said, we are currently in the full proposal window. It is currently the time when prospective BEAD subrecipients are submitting their proposals through Amplifund to VT-BEAD. So that's that full proposal window opened on March 6th and will last through April 16th. Starting April 17th and beyond is when the gating review, technical capability review, and the scoring happens. The hope is that that will be a 2 to 3 week process. So the week of May 5th would be the likely time that there will be a convened scoring consensus meeting to go through the scores and make sure that everyone feels like the outcome of the scoring is where it should be. And then after the consensus meeting is when VT-BEAD will begin negotiations with prospective winners. So I am going to end my screen share here and just check in and see if there's any questions or comments on that overview.
Okay.
All right.
Hopefully not just a stunned silence, but yeah, Tony.
Yeah, I thought just had a little conversation going, right? I was going to ask you on the community engagement piece.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I heard you say if it's fiber, it's 5 points, and then I kind of got confused. I'm not really sure how the fiber relates to the community engagement.
Great clarification, Tony. So it's not that the points are. It's not that that there's points assigned for being fiber. It's just that criteria is more heavily weighted for fiber projects because than for non-fiber projects, because for non-fiber, what we're calling other last mile projects, there's also the scoring criteria of how scalable and resilient the technology is. So some of the other criteria end up being weighted less in order to make space for the weighting of that criteria.
Thank you.
Question. Alexi, did you want to pass over to RSM?
Yeah, I think barring anything else, Mitchell, you are up.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I know most of you do not know me, so I'll go ahead and introduce myself first. My name is Mitchel Skleres, and I am with RSM. We're a contractor for VT-BEAD, responsible for just some various support efforts around the BEAD program in the state of Vermont. One of those being the review guide that I'm going to be walking through with you guys here momentarily, which is really designed for you guys, you as the end users, as the reviewers, and as the scorers in the system, to provide a consistent and replicable application review on each of your assigned applications. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here with you guys, and we can go ahead and step through this document. And as Lucy mentioned, we're really going to be classifying our application reviews in either one of two categories, either a priority broadband project or another last mile project. Our first table that we're going to be seeing here is going to be a priority broadband project. And I just kind of want to walk through the structure of the table, as well as the structure of how we put our review guide together on how it's going to be applicable for you guys as you are going through and scoring your applications and entering them into our scoring system that we will see here a little bit later from Jennifer with Amplifund. So to first introduce our table, we're going to see our sections for our application here broken down in the first column. So we'll see our minimal BEAD program outlay section first, which will be the first section that you will be scoring on your priority broadband project. We're also going to have a section overview, which is going to tie out to the scoring rubric that has been posted and published from VT-BEAD. And again, this is brought in here just so you guys all have it in one consistent, comprehensive place while completing and reviewing your applications here in the system. We are also going to have our methodology column. So this is really going to be kind of that instruction text on what you guys will be leveraging to provide you guidance when going through your application review process on how you should be entering those scores in the system. And Lucy, again, please feel free to jump in at any point here to add some additional context to these scores. But as Lucy mentioned, for our minimal BEAD program outlay section for our priority broadband projects, that is going to be a total of 31 points assigned for this section. That is further broken down by our cost section, our resiliency section, which are both respectively 10 points max for each. And then we also have a 11-point section for the percentage of fiber within the network that the system will be automatically calculating. Those questions that Lucy was referring to as a part of the minimal BEAD program outlay section that we will not be originally scoring are going to be the cost section here, as we indicated here by that do not score message, and that resiliency section here as well. We are not scoring these because to provide a comprehensive score for each of these sections, we need to be able to review all of the submitted applications for each project area so we can go ahead and compare those appropriately to determine and rank those calculations in terms of cost and then in terms of resiliency as well, so we can apply those applicable points of 0 to 10 points for each. We are also going to have that percentage of fiber calculation here for that 11 points, which is going to bring us to that total of 31 points for this section, which is going to apply 1 point for every 9% of fiber in the network, up to a maximum of 11 points total. Lucy, any notes here before moving on?
I just wanted to do one thing right quick, which is that, well, sort of two. One thing we've implied it, but we haven't explained it, which is that there is going to be a score meeting. I forget what we're calling it exactly, but the consensus meeting, I believe, wherein, once folks we've gated it and done the technical review and the scores are all complete for the ones that we've said to do immediately, we will then have a meeting to discuss several of these issues. One reason is that on the sliding scale for the cost, we're just rank ordering it. So it's a certain number of points if you're the cheapest, a few points off if you're the second cheapest, etc. Similarly, for resiliency, we will have at this meeting CTC, who is doing our technical capability review, and we'll structure it such that they're giving their view on the resiliency piece based on their analysis of the network. So just to let you know that you won't be sort of, shooting in the dark on that piece of things, even though I know many of you are technically more capable than myself, for example. So just to give a bit of that context.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Mitchell.
Thank you, Lexi. Greatly appreciate that. Jumping to our next application section is going to be the affordability section. And like Lucy mentioned as well, that one is going to be entirely system calculated here. So this section has a maximum total points available of 30, and the automatic calculation is going to go ahead and assign 3 points for every year of price commitment for a maximum of those 30 points for that section. So meaning that if an applicant has provided a 10-year price commitment, then they're going to receive the total of 30 points for that section. There is also going to be a 1-point deduction for every $10 that the applicant provided system symmetrical price exceeds the FCC urban rate for the priority fiber projects here in the state of Vermont, which has been set at a rate of $73. So again, the system is going to go ahead and automatically calculate that whole section here for us and assign the applicable points with a minimum point value of 0. So just to note that for this section, the minimum amount of points that you can see is 0. There is no chance for the application score for affordability to exceed that threshold. I'll go ahead and jump to our next section, which is going to be our fair labor standards section. Here we're going to have a maximum points available of 14, and we can see that these are going to be broken down into two kind of separate categories that we, as scorers and as reviewers, are going to want to refer to when assigning the applicable points in the system. So reviewing our guide here in our methodology column, we could see the specific application section and the questions that we should be reviewing as a part of this section. And then we could see the point breakdown and the scoring tiers that we are going to be assigning those points in the system for those 10 possible points, which is going to be broken down on the compliance with the federal law, federal labor and employment laws. And then we are also going to have an additional 4 points, which are achievable for applicants based on their compliance, which each of these listed factors here as well. So just walking through the 10 possible points section here, we could see that if the applicant did not demonstrate a record of and plans to comply with federal labor law and employment laws, they should be assigned 0 points in the application. Any other notes here, Lucy?
It looks good to me, Hunter, or it looks good to me, Mitchell.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's just a flag. Hunter has a hand up.
I did have my hand up.
Yep.
Can you go back up?
Yeah, of course.
So can you give me an example of right there, of a demonstration of complying with fair labor and employment laws, like a concrete example of how that would be illustrated in an RFP response?
Lucy, would you like to go ahead and take that one?
Sure. I'm just pulling up the section of the RFP.
And while you're doing that, Lucy, I will say that we're not quite complete on the guide. And one of the things that we do still need to do is provide a little more granularity on some of these more, normative terms that for example, what constitutes minimally demonstrated. So, we can talk about this one now too, but just to flag that, well, we do intend to provide a bit of clarity on some of those elements.
That's fine.
Yep.
And I don't mean to be difficult. I've just been scoring state RFPs for 22 years, and I've seen responses like so-and-so confirms that they will comply with all federal labor and employment laws, and that's their RFP response. That's like, okay, well, how is that demonstrated? How is that a commitment? So if you guys are going to provide more granularity later on, then I'm fine with that. I can wait, and I don't need to go further, but it's something I like to flag.
It's not being difficult, it's bringing expertise. So I will put the RFA link in the chat just because I think it's a helpful one to have handy. But the fair labor standards questions in the RFA, just to briefly answer this, they are mostly narrative, but they involve disclosure. They involve a narrative about the entity's compliance over the last 5 years, and they also involve disclosure of safety protocols, any instances of violation of laws such as OSHA, Fair Labor Standards Act, disclosure of any pending litigation related to violation of laws, and any official labor relations complaints. So I think it's partially the narrative, and it's partially evaluation of what's disclosed, or the lack of disclosure would also indicate a clean record there. I'll put the link in the chat.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Good question.
Thank you, guys. Okay, we'll move to our next application section here, which is going to be community input and engagement. This section is going to be worth a total of 12 points for priority fiber projects. And as Lucy indicated earlier, once we move into the other last mile projects, we'll see that the total points available for this section are going to vary. Scoring for this section is really going to be based on the documentation of community involvement by the applicant, and what they provide in the application itself. We can see some of those examples here indicated in our section overview column, such as letters of support from community organizations, members, and a local government. And we can also see the scoring structure breakdown here on how we should be assigning points in the system, such as if 3 documents or less are uploaded, then we would be assigning 0 points, and we would be assigning the full 12 points if 4 documents out of the 6 are uploaded here as well. And again, like Alexi mentioned, we can continue to really kind of build out the granularity of these responses. So once we are scoring in the system, it'll be a lot more specific in terms of what you're looking for and how you can be assigning those points to the system. Again, also just a note, we do have our application section and the questions that we will be reviewing as a part of this listed here in our methodology column as well. Our next section is going to be local coordination. Again, we're going to have that section and question indication here listed as well. This section is also going to be worth a total of 11 points and is really going to be scored based on the applicant's communication and documentation of involvement with municipalities or regional entities here within that project area as well. And again, we do have that scoring structure breakdown on how you should be assigning those points in the system as well. Our last section for scoring on priority fiber projects is going to be speed to deployment. We're going to have the speed to deployment subsection and the questions associated with this subsection broken down here as well, along with those total points that are going to be available for the section of 2. And again, this section is really being scored based on the applicant's indication and ability to complete the proposed project within that defined period. So we are really going to be looking at a year field here and determining that if the applicant's response is within one of these thresholds, then we will be assigning those applicable points to the application in the system. Any questions with the priority fiber projects before we move on to other last mile? Okay. So our other classification of project review in the system is going to be that other last mile project scoring as well. Our application sections are going to be broken down in a very similar structure, except for the addition of the speed to network and other technical capabilities, which we will review here at the end. But we are going to see a very similar scoring structure breakdown here again as well, such as those manually reviewed questions of cost and resiliency that we will be reviewing in that scoring team review session, and then applying those applicable points back into those applications once we have determined the structure of the proposals within that project area specifically. We're also going to have that automatic calculation again here as well for that percentage of fiber, except this calculation is going to vary from the priority broadband projects for a -1 point for every 9% of non-fiber that is going to be into that network, up to that maximum of 11 points here as well, bringing us again to the total for the minimum BEAD program outlay section for other last mile projects to 31 points total. Our affordability section is going to be structured again in a very similar perspective as well, with one variation in the calculation, which is going to be the FCC urban rate for other last mile projects in Vermont, which is at $58 instead of the originally indicated, I believe it was 73. This automatic calculation again is going to apply 3 points for every year of price commitment up to that maximum of 30 points, and deduct 1 point for every $10 that the applicant provided symmetrical price exceeds that FCC urban rate price. Our next section is going to be the Fair Labor Standards section here again as well, structured in a very similar format where we will review those questions and apply up to that total of 14 points. And then again, we have that breakdown for those 10 possible points for compliance with federal and employment law, and then the additional 4 points that are available with the compliance with the requirements that are laid out here in our reviewer guide. Our next section is going to be our community input and engagement, where we now have a total possible available points of 5 for this section. And again, broken down in that similar perspective where we have the scoring tier structure for how you should be applying that score in the app, in the system when we are physically providing those scores. We also have our local coordination section where again, this review section is now worth 5 points total. We again have our application section breakdown and questions that we will be reviewing as a part of that, and then that scoring tier structure for again how we will be applying those points in the system. We also have our speed to deployment section, which will be scored again in that very similar manner and structure, reviewing the application section and the years provided for that response and how it would fit in our scoring tier structure for how we will assign that 2 possible points available for this section. Our last section that's unique to the other last mile project scoring is going to be the speed of network and other technical capabilities. We also have a system calculation that will occur in this section as well. This section is going to be worth a maximum of 13 points total. And the system is going to go ahead and calculate 1 point for every 10% of fiber in the network, up to a total maximum of 10 points. We are also going to see scoring broken down on a manual basis here as well for 3 possible points based on the commitment to update technology throughout the project's lifecycle. And we can see that scoring structure and how we should be applying those points again here in the system. And our last scoring response here in the speed of network and other technical capabilities section is actually going to be an opportunity for applicants to earn points back depending on the amount of proposed fiber that they had in their proposed project network. So here we're going to have a breakdown into the structure of proposals that have 9% or less of fiber to the home and the amount of points that they can earn back possible, which is going to be that total of 5 points, and the scoring structure that would apply based on whatever responses that the applicants provide to how we would, again, award points back to the applicants in this scenario. We're going to structure this in a few different tiers here. So at 10 to 29% of fiber to the home indication, applicants will have the possibility to earn 4 points back total. 30 to 49% of fiber to the home will have the opportunity to earn 3 points back total. For 50 to 69%, they have the opportunity to earn 2 points back total. And for 70 to 89%, they have the opportunity to earn 1 point back total. And again, as indicated with each of these sections, we have the scoring tier structure for how points should be applied back into the system based on the responses that the applicant provides. So really just walking back through on a high level of this reviewer guide, this is really going to be laid out in a structure for you guys to provide those consistent and replicable reviews across all those applications that you are being assigned to. And you will be able to use this document and leverage it on one screen or in the screen side-by-side functionality for when you are actually going through the system to have a note of what you should be looking for in each application response for each application section for how you guys should be assigning those scores for each of the scoring response fields. So I will go ahead and open it up to any questions, or Lucy, if she has any other input that she wants to provide here on the scoring breakdown.
Not seeing anything. But while you're pondering that, I will just another little addition that, and this Jennifer might cover a little bit of, but it will be us VCBB staff who assign the different applications to the different scorers. So, and there'll be more on that as we go, but it will depend obviously on the number that we receive for the different project areas and kind of the composition. So once we've had a chance to look at that after the window closes on midnight on the 16th, that's when we'll start divvying things out, just to give you
maybe
that.
We should also say when and how should reviewers expect access to this scoring guide?
Oh, as soon as possible, and we will send it to you. So we're hoping to finish that by Wednesday. There's a couple more little meetings we need to have to tidy things up, but that my hope is that midweek. Thanks, Lucy. Okay, Jennifer, over to you.
All right, thanks, Alexi. So now that you have the context on what you're going to be scoring, I'm going to show you how to score it in Amplifund, which is the department's new grants management system. So we are going to focus on one, how you access the applications once you've been told which ones you will score, and then how to score it themselves. And then finally, how to access any customer support or technical help as you are going through that scoring process. Just a really quick overview here. how the application process works in the grants management system is that you do have an applicant who's submitting an electronic application. The VC-BEAD team is then going to enroll that application in a workflow. And what all of you are doing as part of that workflow is the scoring. There's a lot of other steps involved there as part of the review process, but today we're really just going to narrow in on that scoring. So I want to start by talking about how you actually get into Amplifund. Some of you may have already logged in through other kind of PSD functions. If you are new to Amplifund, you will start by going to gotomygrants.com. You will enter your email address, and then you're going to click the button at the bottom here that says Login with SSO. The state has single sign-on, so the credentials that you use to log in with Amplifund will actually be how you log into any other state system. If you don't have access to Amplifund yet, you will be receiving that shortly once we've gone through a setup process with your IT department as well. So again, log in at gotomygrants.com, click Login with SSO. You will not need to create a password for Amplifund. You will use your state password and credentials. All right. And then Alexi kind of previewed this, but as applications start to roll in and they decide who's going to score what, you will receive workflow notifications from Amplifund. They're going to tell you the opportunity name, which is going to be the BEAD opportunity, the organization that applied, and the application name, and it's going to have a workflow queue. You will see this come in for every single application that is submitted. However, you only need to score the applications that the VC-BEAD team tells you. So just kind of a heads up, you are going to get a lot of notifications, but you're only going to be scoring a certain subset of those applications. You will also receive kind of reminders through the process as the scoring's going along if we haven't scored something that needs to be scored. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and dive into Amplifund. When you first log into Amplifund, you will land at this calendar screen. What you see from here is going to depend on your user credentials. For all of us, though, we will see this activity in the upper left, in our left menu, which notice I can expand or collapse that with the arrow. To get to the applications that I need to score, I am going to come to Activity, Workflow Actions. This will bring me to a grid where I'm going to see every single application in the BEAD opportunity. I only need to score the ones that the VC-BEAD team tells me that I need to score. So you're going to see the application name here in the back part of this description. And then this next piece where right now it says State of Vermont Department of Public Service, that's going to be the applicant name. So as you're scoring, you'll know which applicant and which specific application you're scoring. You will click on that application and it will take you into a scoring view. So again, I started from Activity, Workflow Actions. I clicked on the application. Now I'm within the application itself. So this is going to be the application name. Before we talk about scoring, I just want to show you some very basic navigation as you're reviewing applications. First, you can download the whole application by clicking this application button with the arrow. This is going to download a zip file of the application and any attachments. The screen that we're on right now is giving you basic details about the application itself. I'll zoom in here a little bit. I can see the opportunity that they applied for, who the applicant was, a system-generated application ID, the application name, submission date and timestamp, how much they're requesting, and then who submitted this application. Under the Application Materials tab, I can move through different parts of the application. Project information is going to be a very high-level overview of what they've requested. Application forms is going to be kind of the meat of the application. This is where all of the questions that they have to answer live. So there's going to be a lot of information here. And again, when you click that download button, all of this is going to come with it. So here are all of the questions in the application. If you click into any of these sections, you'll see each applicant's specific responses. So I'm going to click into the gating criteria, so I can see what the applicant answered. I can also see the budget that they submitted, if I have permissions for that. And then I can see any attachments that they uploaded as part of their application. And again, all of these would download if I chose to download the entire application. So I can review in one of two ways. I can review via the system through the application materials, or I can download the whole application as a PDF. When I'm ready to score, I'm going to use my top menu. I will come to workflow. When I click on that, I'll see available actions. Most of you should only see one action here that says score application and submit. I'm going to click this action, and it's going to open the application up into kind of an edit mode for me. This is where you'll need to follow instructions that will be given to you by the VT-BEAD team. As Lucy and Mitchell described, there's different types of scoring. We have priority scoring and other last mile scoring. If you are doing priority scoring, you're going to find all of your scored fields in the project overview form. If you are doing other last mile scoring, you're going to find all your scored fields in the minimal BEAD program outlay and affordability form. So you will be given instructions on what type of scoring you're doing for each application. For our training today, I'm going to do priority scoring. So to score all of my priority fields, I will click into the project overview form. This is after I've reviewed the application in full. So what I'm doing at this point is I'm coming in to enter my scores. At the bottom of the form, you'll see some blue or some large text here that says priority broadband scoring. There's going to be some instructions for you, same with the other last mile. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and enter those scores per the direction in my reviewer guide that Lucy and Mitchell have gone over today. So I'll enter a score from cost on a scale of 0 to 10. And then I can put in comments on why I scored this the way that I did. I can type in here, I can paste. I have lots of formatting options that I can use if I want to bold anything. If I have maybe a bulleted list of items that I want to call out, I can do so. And I will proceed through all of my scored fields like this, selecting the appropriate score by clicking the drop down and then entering comments. If at any point I need to leave and come back, I'm going to click save. That will take me back out, and you can see that my project overview is in progress. I could log out of Amplifund at this time if I needed to walk away by clicking my name and log out. Then again, I would come back through activity, workflow actions, available actions, and score. So I'm going to come back in and I'm going to finish my scoring. So I can always kind of come back to this. I don't have to do it all in one sitting. There are instructions kind of embedded in here for the system calculated fields that were talked about. So I'll enter a score for fair labor standards and I'll put in any comments here. On community input and engagement, I'm going to select either 0 or 12. I will select 0 if they have 3 documents or less uploaded, and 12 points if they have 4 documents out of the 6. Again, I have my comment fields as well. For local coordination, I also have instructions here on where I should scale my scoring. I'll enter my comments. And then finally, I have speed to deployment. At the bottom of every scored form, whether you're doing priority or other last mile, you will have this final comments box. This is where you can put some overall comments on the entire application. If I want to come back and edit these later, I'll click Save. If I'm ready to finalize them, I will click Submit. I will only need to score one application form. So when I'm completed with scoring, this is actually how it will look. There will be a lot of forms that say scored by you, no. That's because there's no scoring fields in these forms. That's expected and that's okay. So once I've submitted my scores, I'm done with this application. I would move to the next application by coming to Activity, Workflow Actions, and then selecting the right application from the grid. I also want to show you a custom report that may be helpful for you as you're scoring. It will show you your progress in scoring. So you can come to Reports in the left menu and then click Custom Reports. That's going to take you to this tab. And the report that's going to be helpful for you as you are scoring is this Applications-Scoring Progress. This is just going to show you what applications you've scored and what's in progress for you. I will use the drop down here to select the funding opportunity. So Vermont Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program. I'll click OK. And then it's going to bring up all of the applications. In the right-hand panel here, I'm going to select my name so I can see which ones that I've started scoring and where I am. So this one's showing me that I have scored my priority scoring and it's been submitted. So you can use this report as needed to kind of help you keep track of where you are in scoring your applications. You can also export it if you need to with the drop-down arrow to a spreadsheet, a PDF, or a Word document. Now, as you're scoring, if you need technical assistance or technical support in any way, you can contact Amplifund customer support. There's a couple of ways to do this, and I'm going to walk you through them. And this is just your preference on whichever one of these makes the most sense for you. First, you can visit the support portal. You can also send an email to support@amplifund.zendesk.com, or you can call the help desk. It's going to be manned from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Fridays. If you come to the support site, you will find trainings and user guides on here. So the user guides are going to be in the user guides section or the instructions section. And you can just do a quick search here, say for scoring, to kind of see how to score an application. So you can find a written guide here if you need assistance. Or there's also some video training that's helpful in this Grantmaker Core series. This is all going to be linked in your PowerPoint for you so you can find it later. And then I can also submit a ticket through the support site as well. If I'm scoring within Amplifund itself and I get stuck at any point, I can always click this little eye icon here. This is going to bring up a shortcut for me to submit a ticket to that support team. Or in the bottom left corner, I have a resource center. So I can do a couple of things here. If I come to the support section, I can start typing in some keywords here on how to score, and it's going to pull up those articles. So I don't even necessarily need to go to the support portal to see kind of these instructions. I can do it all from within Amplifund as I'm scoring, and they'll come up here. And again, you can always talk to a person as well. You can call that number, you can reach out via email too. So that is how we score in Amplifund. And as I said, there's going to be some references in the back of the slide deck that will be shared with you following this training that are going to have just some kind of quick links and help for you as you are scoring. So I will pause here. Are there any questions for me on how to score in Amplifund?
Recognizing that that is a lot of information all at once. I would again just note that, we'll send out the video. I will try to break it up by section if I can. And, as you're able to work on thinking through some of these things. If you have questions, then we are available. And so I'll just pause briefly if there are any additional questions. Okay. So next steps will be to get you these materials, and then as we get through the closing of the application portal, getting you which ones you're actually scoring, and providing some information on the timing that we're hoping for in these, and then setting up at least the initial consensus meeting. So we'll start looking for times on folks' calendar here soon to block out some time to do that. And as always, feel free to reach out to me or any of the VCBB team. I'm probably easiest just to farm things out to where they ultimately need to go. So don't hesitate to reach out. And with that, I will stop the recording.